Hello and welcome to History for Weirdos.
We're your hosts, Andrew
and Stephanie,
and each week we're going to take you on a journey into the strange, obscure, and relentlessly entertaining corners of human history.
Now listen up, friends, because it's about to get weird. Weirdos, welcome back to our very last Historical Mysteries episode for July.
Yeah, that's right, and we're going out with a banger this week.
We're going out with a very classic mystery, I will say, and for you, it's very modern.
Exactly, right. Like, as you guys are well aware by now, my heart, definitely lies in the ancient past.
Yes.
Especially when it comes to history, but I will say I'm starting to really enjoy 20th century history as well.
Wow.
So very, very different.
We're converting him.
I know. Well, no. I'm always, Rome is, my bread and butter.
Mm-hmm.
And the ancient history, or ancient world, is also just fascinating to me. But I do like the 20th century because it does also kind of tie in a little bit, you see a lot of our world in that. And you can almost glimpse and see, okay, we're right here because of all of these screw-ups in the past, basically. Or all these triumphs.
That's true.
Less often.
Yeah, I agree. Tell us, what history mystery are we covering today?
A history mystery. Okay, so this week's episode is at its heart like a cautionary tale on the trappings of power and how it can corrupt people. Especially people who had started off with good intentions.
Ooh, when you become the thing you sought to destroy.
Yes, like Anakin and the Sith.
Yeah, like Anakin and the Sith.
You were supposed to destroy the Sith, not join them!
Thank you, we had no idea what you were talking about.
Okay, sorry. Anyways, now away from Star Wars, as ADHD just came in really hard right there. So, as you guys will see here, someone who started off fighting the good fight, not Anakin, to get more rights and power to workers became seduced with keeping power to himself.
Yes.
That is the subject of this story. At its core, though, this episode is still a mystery, and even to this day, one that is filled with intrigue and has been gnawing on the public consciousness for almost half a century.
That's a very long time.
Yeah. So without further ado, let's explore the mystery surrounding the disappearance of the infamous labor rights leader and gangster, Jimmy Hoffa.
Let's do it.
And if you have baby boomer parents, they have probably told you about Jimmy Hoffa.
Mm-hmm. Or if you're a baby boomer.
Yeah, that's true.
Particularly folks in Detroit or the East Coast, right?
Yes, definitely.
And
yeah, even my parents in California have spoken incessantly, at least in the past, about Jimmy Hoffa.
He's a bi-coastal guy.
He definitely is. At least that's what it sounds like. So let's get into the rise of Jimmy Hoffa. And we can't get into the rise of him without exploring his early past.
Okay.
Or his early life, I should say.
I don't really know anything about him, actually, so I'm eager to learn.
So get this. He was born in Brazil.
Brazil?
Indiana.
Oh my gosh.
Brazil, Indiana.
I did not know that existed.
Yes, I didn't know either until this episode. So, he was born in Brazil, Indiana on Valentine's Day, 1913. His birth name, James Riddle Hoffa, is one of the most notorious names in American history, right? We were just talking about it with our parents and their generation. But when Jimmy was only 7 years old, his father, John Hoffa, who was a coal miner, died from lung cancer.
Yeah, that was really common.
Yeah, they're just breathing in all...
Your terrible. Lungs are just struggling.
Yeah, I mean, they'll become black. So 4 years later, his family moved from Indiana to Detroit, Michigan, where he would actually spend the rest of his life.
Okay.
So as a young boy of just 14 years old, Hoffa left school so that he could work as a manual laborer in order to help support his family.
That must have been really hard.
Yeah. It must have been really hard, and it's also going to shape kind of the rest of his life. Just this little detail from his early childhood. So around this time, Hoffa worked for a grocery chain Kroger, which still exists to this day, where he got his first taste for union life.
Okay.
So the chain paid substandard wages, and they had a poor work environment. Hoffa's personality and determination helped the workers unionize, and he quickly rose to a leadership position within the union itself.
As a boy, basically?
Yeah, just as as a child, as a teenager.
That's crazy.
So he orchestrated his very first strike at just 19 years of age in 1932.
What were you like at 19, babe?
I was partying.
Yeah, you were.
I was partying. I was not organizing labor strikes. I wish I would have, now and especially in retrospect.
What was I doing at 19?
Partying?
Yeah, I was also partying.
So, but back to this labor strike. He was using a newly delivered shipment of fresh strawberries as a bargaining chip.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, everyone loves their strawberries. And fun fact, Weirdos, one of my favorite fruits, if not my favorite fruit, is strawberries. So,
did you just share that the fun fact is that strawberries are one of your favorite fruits?
If not my favorite. It's either one or two.
It's mango.
I always flip-flop between the two.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realize.
So this would work. I mean, I'm only bringing this up because it would work on me, Fresh strawberries, especially a lot of them.
Big bargaining power right there.
It's a lot of bargaining power. So impressed by his tenacity, the Teamsters Union, specifically Local 299, invited him to be an organizer for the union the same year.
Wow. Again, at just such a young age.
At 19, yeah. Hoffa's leadership and organizational skills helped the Teamsters' numbers grow exponentially in just a few short years. So he's really proving himself at such a young age, and even in his early 20s. So, and in case you didn't know, the Teamsters is a workers' union here in the United States that started in 1903. And so the Teamsters initially served to promote better wages and working conditions for truck drivers and warehouse workers. However, over time it grew, and today it is the most diverse union in the United States, serving workers in all varieties of occupations, both in the public and private sector, professional and non-professional.
I had no idea it went so far back. I'm familiar with the union, but
yeah,
it's a long history.
So Teamsters is a funny name, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't write this in my notes, but when I read it, it actually kind of made me laugh. So the original Teamsters, where that name comes from, are the people who would drive horse-drawn carts.
Oh, so an old-timey truck driver.
Yeah,
basically.
Exactly. And that's who they their bread and butter would be truck drivers. So it kind of just makes sense that it naturally progressed into that.
I had no idea. I thought it was just a funny name.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I was like, yeah, we're Teamsters here. You see?
Yeah, we're on a team. We're on the same team.
That's what I thought. I literally thought the same thing.
How interesting.
So, back to Hoffa's leadership, let's just say it could get messy at times. So in his early days with Local 299, Hoffa and others would intimidate employers by telling them to sign their workers up with the union or have their trucks bombed.
Oh, that... It went from strawberries to bombs really quickly.
Really quickly. So, employers typically adhere to his demands.
I would too.
So when speaking about his own experience, Hoffa would characterize himself as a, quote, hands-on kind of guy.
I'm sure he was.
Yeah. So typically that meant getting violent or receiving violence even from the police.
Mm-hmm.
Good times.
Mm-hmm.
So Hoffa's union typically worked, again, like I said, in the trucking industry, and Hoffa became well known throughout the entire industry as a tough and knowledgeable bargainer. So, for instance, he played a key role in the creation of the very first national freight hauling agreement.
Wow, a national one.
Yeah, across the whole nation, and he did this still at quite a young age, probably in his maybe early 30s, like my age right now. So instead of being, a podcast co-host, maybe I should have been organizing these labor contracts.
Yeah, national policies, my goodness.
I know, it's pretty cool actually, I have to say. So, it wasn't always, though, employers that Hoffa had to fight.
It wasn't just the companies?
It wasn't just the companies. He kind of had to cover his rear end as well. And that meant that he had, in fact, had to fight other unions that were encroaching onto his territory, i.e. his workers.
Oh, they had like turf wars.
Yeah, these were called Union raids, and lots of Hoffa's early work was to fight these off away from the Teamsters to kind of keep them in power.
It really is like a gang.
Right, exactly, because the more numbers you have, the more workers you have underneath your workers' union, the more powerful you are with employers, right? So your bargaining power goes up, right? Like you said, strength in numbers.
Strength in numbers, yeah.
So the methods of fighting these off were not usually very savory, adding to Jimmy Hoffa's infamous reputation. And I mean infamous. Even to like other labor union leaders. So, throughout the 1940s, Hoffa centralized Detroit area chapters and unified the region's leadership. He was even able to escape being drafted into World War II, citing his leadership in the Union and claiming that he would be able to do more good with the Union than actually fighting abroad.
Oh my goodness, and it worked.
It did. It worked. He was so successful that in 1946, at the age of 33, he became the president of Teamsters Local 299.
Oh, wow.
See, and some of these guys that are underneath him, they have decades on him, but he's still the leader. That's just how, I think, articulate and persuasive he could be.
Sounds very politically savvy.
Very politically savvy. And before moving any further, I do want to add that Jimmy Hoffa actually married a little bit before this time. So when he was 24, he married 18-year-old Josephine Pasiwak, whom he met only 6 months before at a strike for laundry workers.
Aw, that's cute.
It really is.
That's a really cool place to meet your future spouse.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Very passionate couple.
Very passionate. So, moving forward to 1952. So Hoffa would be, 39 at this time, let's just say. So he was elected vice president at the National Convention of the IBT, so International Brotherhood of Teamsters, and helped relocate the union's headquarters to Washington, D.C.
Where there's power.
Right, exactly. You said it better than anyone else could have.
What's the name of the group? The International Brotherhood?
Of Teamsters.
It sounds like a cult.
It kind of does.
Yeah. Amanda, who has the podcast on cults, she should look into the Teamsters Union.
I know. Or just labor unions in general.
Yeah.
That's true. So, 5 years later, the Teamsters president, Dave Beck, was sent to prison for fraud.
Okay.
Like the president of a major workers union.
That's not too surprising, though.
It's not, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But at the same year in 1957, at the Miami Convention for the IBT, Hoffa assumed the presidency of the organization.
Mr. President.
He's Mr. President now.
Already.
Yeah.
So he's got a ton of power.
Yeah, and he's just in his early to mid 40s. Okay. So yeah, he's still pretty young at this time. So now, remember what I was saying earlier about Hoffa's reputation? Well, it's now going to bite him in the rear end.
Oh, the fact that it's unsavory?
Exactly. So, the very same year, 1957, the IBT was actually voted out of the AFL-CIO on a vote of 5-1. And so the AFL-CIO is like a federation of labor unions.
Okay.
So it's almost like a union for unions.
Okay.
In a way.
Super union.
Unionception.
Yeah. And they kicked his group out because they didn't like Jimmy Hoffa.
That is exactly the reason why they got kicked out. It wasn't anything else. It literally had all to do with Hoffa.
Wow.
Yeah, in fact, the leadership of the AFL-CIO, stated that they would only allow the Teamsters to continue as members if Hoffa stepped down from the presidency.
And
that was the only condition they had.
How did they respond?
So Hoffa's response to this was, quote, "We'll see."
Ooh, that's a threat.
Yeah.
That's like, I don't know why that gave me vibes of just wait till your other parent comes home.
You know what's funny? We were talking about ancient history earlier. It actually reminded me of ancient history.
How so?
The Spartans' response to Philip II, so the father of Alexander the Great, when he said to Sparta, if I invade you guys, you will be utterly destroyed. And they just sent back, if.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
If.
Or,
that's a very similar response. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, exactly. Or what the Spartans, again, said to the Persians during before the Battle of Thermopylae, Molon Labe, come and take them.
Oh my goodness, I didn't realize the Spartans were so sassy.
They were, and in fact, okay, really quick detour because I love the Spartans, but their whole culture, especially for men, was to be quippy.
Oh.
But very short and concise. Like the shorter.
Spartan.
Very Spartan, exactly. Mm-hmm. Like they really admired men that could say a lot with very few words. So the exact opposite of today's politicians.
Brief and witty.
Brief and witty.
The exact opposite of the world we're living in.
I know, right?
How interesting.
A little bit of that in today's society.
Absolutely. And that's definitely Jimmy Hoffa's vibe.
Exactly.
Right here.
So going back to Hoffa and the Teamsters in particular, they were a pretty integral part of the AFL-CIO. So in fact, they were bringing in over $750,000 annually in dues to the AFL-CIO at this time, which is roughly around $8.5 million in today's money.
They were willing
at least
to say bye to all that money because of Jimmy Hoffa.
That's how much they hated Hoffa or feared him.
That sounds like they didn't want him coming for their positions.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking is they were probably in the mindset of Hoffa is going to become a leader of the AFL-CIO and therefore all of these labor unions, and who knows what will happen then. Maybe the middle class would still be around. Sassy Andrew right there. So funny enough though, the Teamsters would be reaffiliated with the AFL-CIO again, but not for another 30 years from this point.
Okay, so they stick with what they said for a long time.
They do.
Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't until the late 80s they'd rejoin. So, and it's, again, during this time that Hoffa really shined in his role, though. And he reached what would be like the peak of his career in the late 50s and early 60s. So, it's important to note that even employers in the trucking industry and other adjacent industries to trucking did not actually hate Hoffa. It was actually the opposite. They really admired the guy.
The guy that was threatening them?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it must be that as he got older, maybe those overt threats of violence like kind of subsided and he was a little bit more political savvy, especially when you're just like kind of like a local, for lack of better words, thug, right? You don't have to really be that politically savvy, but then once you're talking about like on the national stage, you need to switch gears pretty quickly.
And he already had the reputation of you don't mess with this guy, so you probably don't have to work as hard to get people to respect you.
That's true too. He, even amongst the employers, he was known as a master negotiator, a genius, and a brilliant statesman.
Oh my goodness, very good skills to have.
Yeah, exactly. I'd say the absolute apex of his career was probably around 1964 when Hoffa helped unite over 400,000 truck drivers under one contract.
That's a lot of bodies.
Yeah, the 1964 National Master Freight Agreement.
That's going to make such a big economic impact. Think of their families.
You literally read my mind because my very next note is one congressman at the time said, quote, Jimmy Hoffa has put more bread and butter on the tables for American kids than all of his directors combined, end quote.
That's a really good way of putting it. And people are going to be loyal to the person that's keeping bread and butter on the table.
People are always loyal to the people that feed them and pay them.
Exactly. He was doing both.
He's doing both, yeah. Also, kind of a random side bit, and I found this fascinating, but Jimmy Hoffa was a staunch advocate for civil rights, and in fact did not even allow segregationist unions to merge with the Teamsters.
Oh my goodness. That's really cool.
Yeah, very surprising, honestly.
Unexpected, but we like it.
Yeah, we like it. Okay, Hoffa. So he was also the type of guy to regularly give out his office phone number and insisted that members call him at any hour of the day or night if they had problems.
No.
Yeah, I was going to say, you are going to disapprove of this.
Jimmy Hoffa needed to learn boundaries.
Boundaries, people, boundaries.
Work can't be your whole life, sir. But it sounds like it was for him.
It was, yeah. I think
It was his identity.
it was personal too. His dad dying when he was a young age,
Yes.
like forced to drop out of school. Like he didn't even finish high school. I don't even know if he started high school.
Yes, you're right. So much was taken from him because being working class, his family and his family's rights weren't protected.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And because of that little thing of when he was like 14 years old or however old he was, going to work and like
Instead of school.
instead of school, he's now the president of one of the largest, if not the largest, workers union in the country.
That's incredible.
Yeah, talk about a rise. So let's switch gears now a little bit. So remember when I told you that the old Teamsters president was sent to jail?
Yeah, for fraud.
So that was part of the McClellan Committee, which was founded in 1957 as the United States Senate Select Committee on Improper Activities in Labor and Management.
Oh my gosh, that's so government.
It is so government. I mean, that name is terrible. It's like, come on, guys. Jeez Louise.
It's so long. I
Yeah.
don't remember a single word you said.
Yeah, it's okay. It doesn't matter. Just the McClellan Committee.
Okay.
So, and it was also under this that Hoffa was arrested that very year for the crimes of allegedly bribing an agent of that committee.
Oh no.
So he denied the charges, of course, and was ultimately acquitted. However, the arrest spurred further investigations and set the tone for the remainder of his career, honestly. But more importantly, he made a couple of incredibly powerful enemies. One guy by the name of Robert Kennedy, and the other guy, his brother, maybe you heard of him, John F. Kennedy?
Oh, Jack, yeah.
Jack.
I know Jackie boy.
Jackie boy.
The Kennedys didn't like him?
Oh no. So Robert Kennedy was on the McClellan Committee.
Oh.
And once JFK was elected to the presidency, Robert became the Attorney General of the United States and made it his mission to convict Hoffa.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow, I'd be flattered.
So beginning in 61, Robert Kennedy began a campaign, again, like I said, to bring down organized crime. And part of that was and this is like an actual thing, a quote, get Hoffa squad of investigators and prosecutors solely dedicated to bringing him down.
That's how powerful he was.
Yes.
And that's how much Robert Kennedy hated him.
Robert Kennedy hated him. So, and they were successful as early as 1963 when Hoffa was convicted of jury tampering as he was accused of bribing a member of the grand jury during his 1962 conspiracy trial in Tennessee.
No!
It was so hard keeping these things like in a line. I completely lost my place multiple times when looking at his like criminal history.
That's insane that he just kept doing essentially the same thing.
Yeah, because I think he felt like he was Teflon, right? He could anything would just bounce right off of him.
It's interesting because so far he has seemed very smart, and that's such a dumb move.
Yeah.
To bribe a juror?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it gets worse here. So he was sentenced to 8 years in prison and was forced to pay a $10,000 fine. However, while he was out on bail, Hoffa was again arrested and put on trial, this time in Chicago.
That's so embarrassing.
He was convicted in Chicago for mail and wire fraud and for improperly using Teamsters pension funds.
Ooh, that's a bad one.
Like, come on, man.
I mean, they're all bad.
Yeah.
Bribery, fraud, misappropriating funds. Those are not good things to do.
No. So this conviction carried a 5-year prison sentence. So Hoffa's total conviction time was 13 years, which he began serving in 1967 at the Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary in Pennsylvania after 3 years of unsuccessful appeals.
Okay, so he did try to appeal it and get out of it.
Exactly. So I don't have this in my notes, but I did want to bring up something. One of his greatest enemies was John F. Kennedy, right, President of the United States. And it seemed that the breakthrough of kind of getting at him was 1963.
The breakthrough of getting at Hoffa?
Yeah.
Was the year that Kennedy was shot.
Yes.
Interesting.
Could be a coincidence, right? But I know, or I surmise that, based off a lot of evidence, that Kennedy was probably, his assassination was linked to the mafia.
Really?
Yes. So I'm not going to get into it too much because that is like
A rabbit hole.
yeah, that is a whole rabbit hole in and of itself. I feel like we could probably have a multiple part series on just that assassination. But I do find the timing interesting.
I'd say at least it's a really interesting coincidence.
Exactly, at the very least. So at this time, when Hoffa is finally like going to jail, basically, a man by the name of Frank Fitzsimmons took on the presidency of the Teamsters.
Okay.
But not only with Hoffa's blessing, but it also been arranged that Hoffa would essentially work through him as Fitzsimmons was loyal to Hoffa and a fellow Detroiter. Basically, he was going to be a puppet.
A puppet president, yeah. That's
Exactly.
smart. You can still kind of control things from prison.
Exactly. But not all is what it seems in the world of organized labor.
Because I am such an expert in the world of organized labor. Tell us what is not as it seems.
As soon as Fitzsimmons took power, he began to distance himself from Hoffa. Luckily, though, for Hoffa, in 1971, less than 5 years into his sentence, Jimmy Hoffa was released from prison on a deal struck with President Richard Nixon.
Okay. What was the deal?
So Hoffa would have his sentence commuted, but he would have to officially resign his post as president of the Teamsters and agree to not be involved with any union activities until March 6, 1980.
That's a pretty fair deal.
It's a very fair deal. Though, unbeknownst to anyone in this agreement, Hoffa would not live long enough to see the year 1980.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, after all, that is the mystery.
Mm-hmm.
So now, of course, once he's released from prison, Hoffa claims that he never agreed to that part of the deal. He wanted to be in leadership position within the union.
He's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. He was the best guy around. What about the murders? What murder?
Yeah. Are they talking about Hoffa in that clip?
No, they're talking
Okay.
about someone later. I think, who was that big?
Oh gosh, you watched a documentary series on him, right?
Yes.
Gotti.
Gotti. Yeah, John Gotti.
That's who they were talking about. Okay.
Exactly. Another J name.
Mm-hmm.
So Hoffa accused several members of Richard Nixon's administration of depriving him of his civil rights over the terms and conditions of his release.
Oh my goodness, his civil rights.
Yes. Hoffa did hope to retake the Teamsters presidency, right? So this threw a little wrench in his plan.
So his plan was probably, I'm gonna like agree to whatever to get out of here. But then once I'm out, once I'm free, I'm also going to do whatever I need to do to get my power back.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
That's absolutely what I think. So, despite suing the administration and losing a great deal of favor within the Teamsters leadership, Hoffa returned to Local 299, where he hoped to regain some of his former success. Again, already like breaking that deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like he can't go back to the national level, but he's like, well, maybe if I go back to the local level.
He keeps like disregarding the rules, the law. It seems like he thinks he's above it.
So here's what I think. This is a hypothesis, right? So this is not based in any fact. This is just what I personally think. I want to be very clear. I do think that he saw a lot of like corporations basically doing the same thing, like getting around the law. And he
They
saw
do all the time. Yeah.
exactly even other labor unions, maybe even his own labor union, right? Like just skirting the law. Anyone who has power and money
Can do that.
can do that, right? The law doesn't apply to them as much as it would to you, me, or most you weirdos out there. So I think he just got it in his head, like, just don't get caught.
But he's pretty good at getting caught.
He's pretty, yeah. It's like, bro, it sounds like you're a really good statesman, maybe not as good at not getting caught.
I think that's a pretty fair hypothesis on your part too.
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine if he saw how corporations are treated now?
Oh my God, I think he would have. I mean, even Teddy Roosevelt, I think they'd have like an aneurysm.
They're given more rights than people. It's crazy.
Insane. So it's during this time too that Hoffa was working on his autobiography, Hoffa, The Real Story, which would be published following his disappearance.
Ooh.
Yeah. So, fun fact, following his time in prison, Hoffa also began to take on prison reform as he felt the prison system was worse than hell. Like, that is his exact words.
This is a man of the people.
He really is, yeah. I mean, yeah, civil rights, prison reform. Like, who is this guy? He's not just the thug that we've been told he is or was.
Yeah, and workers' rights. These are all very noble issues to take on. Do you think he was doing it because he cared or because he wanted power?
You know what? I'm going to save that question to the very end.
Okay.
Once we kind of like have gone over everything. Because I do have a pretty clear stance on that.
Oh, okay.
So, before moving on, though, I also do want to mention that Hoffa actually received a pretty large payout as a termination benefit from the union's retirement and family protection plan. That payout being $1.75 million
For back then?
back then, which is roughly 13.5 million in today's money.
Oh my god.
Yo, give me that change.
That's
Give me that
so
cheddar.
much money.
And that's like using CPI inflation, which I feel like is actually understating how bad inflation is right now. I'm thinking that's closer to like double that, like 25 million.
So him trying to get back in the union, then for sure it's not about the money. Because they're like, here, take a bunch of money.
Yeah,
He really wants to be a leader.
I do think so.
Okay.
And I do believe that he has been seduced by power.
Mm-hmm.
So at the beginning of this episode, I described Hoffa as a gangster, right?
Yeah.
But as you may have noticed, we haven't really covered any of his mob relations. We've covered some of his violent tendencies to bomb cars. Sounds more like the IRA than the mafia, though.
Yeah. It's kind of like a little bit terrorist behavior.
Slightly terrorist behavior. Well, I guess like the mob did like light buildings on fire, but usually
Yes, that's true.
it wasn't to like kill people. It was just to like get insurance.
It's to send a
payouts.
message.
Yeah, or send a message. You're right. So we have to realize that during the kind of like the early, mid, even some of the later parts of the 20th century, organized labor and organized crime had some pretty tight relations. And a large part of this was for labor to keep themselves safe, though. It's important, to, I think, to remember that.
Physically safe?
Physically safe, yeah.
Okay.
So Hoffa, he was no stranger to this. In 1946, for example, Hoffa created the first known institutionalized connection between the Teamsters and the Detroit Mafia when he hired William Buffalino as president of Local 985.
Oh my gosh. So he made it legit.
Yeah, it's like legit. They are, they're like this, crossing fingers. So Buffalino, by the way, was the president of the mob-run alcohol distribution company, Belvin Distributing Company. And he would become a close personal friend and lawyer for Hoffa. Another mob connection that Hoffa had, Anthony Provenzano. And this one, you gotta remember this one.
Anthony Provenzano.
Yeah.
Got it.
He was a Teamster local leader and even vice president to Jimmy Hoffa, but more importantly, a caporegime, or capo for short, for the Genovese crime family.
Oh, okay. So he's got leadership roles in both
Yes.
organizations.
Yes, so not only within the Teamsters, but also the Genovese crime family.
I could see how that would be really dangerous.
Yeah, like by the way, like a capo is kind of like a mid-level person within like a mob organization, like a lieutenant or a captain, possibly.
Okay.
So at least two of Provenzano's union opponents had been murdered before, and others who had spoken out against him had been like violently assaulted.
Weird coincidences there.
Weird coincidences, right? Provenzano was a dangerous man.
Sounds like it.
But even though Provenzano and Hoffa were friends, they had a falling out when they were both in jail. I don't know why that's so funny to me.
They both wound up there. Like, you'd think you'd get closer.
Right.
But they ended up falling out. How weird.
Yeah.
Do you know why they had a falling out?
No idea.
Okay.
I mean, Weirdos, if you know, let me know, but I couldn't find it. To be fair, I didn't look that hard.
I'm just a chismosa, I was curious.
Yeah. When Hoffa tried to reconnect with him and ask for his support in 1973 and 1974, he was not successful. In fact, Provenzano told Hoffa in one instance that he would, quote, kidnap and eviscerate Hoffa's grandchildren.
Oh no, that's too far.
Way too far.
Way too far. Like, this is all not the greatest behavior. These aren't the things I would do.
So you're saying that this guy Provenzano isn't a peach?
No, that's terrible. To his grandchildren?
grandchildren.
Oof.
Yeah, like that. I feel like you're really breaking like a certain covenant here. That you're going after children.
Yeah,
You're a POS, man.
I agree.
Yeah. So more mobsters had um, come onto the scene, and they even acted as mediators and a go-between for both Provenzano and Hoffa, like in kind of this mid 70s
Okay.
era. So one of them, Anthony Iaccolone, he was an alleged kingpin in the Detroit Mafia, and his brother Vito were the main mafiosos.
There's a lot of really good names in this episode.
Incredible names, I
Yeah.
know. Not as good as, I mean, they're good Italian names, but not as good as like the ancient Latin names. Though I may be biased.
I think you're biased.
Yeah, I absolutely am. So, Hoffa's son, James, has since said that he felt these arranged meetings between like Iaccolone and Hoffa were more of a setup for a future hit than they were about peace talks. I don't know why he
Oh,
says that. Maybe he did glean something. Maybe he's seen something. But that's at least what he thought.
he thinks that peace was never the intention.
Exactly.
Okay.
They were trying to coax him out. And to make matters worse for Hoffa, he began to publicly attack Fitzsimmons and the Mafia for the way they were turning the Teamsters into a seemingly criminal institution.
I say this about a lot of the people we cover. I'm now realizing, but Jimmy Hoffa had some impulse control issues there.
Maybe like all these people that have done great things, maybe they did have a little bit of impulse control.
Yeah.
Right? That was kind of like they live by the sword, they also die by the sword.
Yes, exactly.
And we're going to find out here really shortly what I meant by that, or what I mean by that. So, July 30th, 1975. This is the last day that Jimmy Hoffa was ever seen.
Oh my gosh, and today is July 24th.
Yes, and this episode will be released on July 29th.
Whoa. Did you plan that?
I wish I could say that I did.
You could have. You could have lied to us.
I really could have lied, but I'm not going to lie to you, weirdos. I may lie to Stephanie, never the weirdos.
Yeah.
So, it was also the date that was set between Hoffa, Iaccolone, and Provenzano to meet. Hoffa had the meeting scheduled to take place at the Red Fox restaurant in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, on his calendar for 2 p.m. that day. And we actually even have the Jimmy Hoffa's writing in his
Planner?
In his planner, yes.
Wow.
So he arrived on location after stopping to meet with a friend who also worked for him part-time as a limo driver, but his buddy, Louis Linto, wasn't there when he stopped by, so he just continued on to the restaurant.
Okay.
Hoffa's wife reported that between like 2:15 and 2:30 p.m., Hoffa called her from a payphone, angry that it seemed like he had been stood up, and he promised his wife that he would be home to cook dinner for 4 p.m.
Oh, wow.
Several witnesses that day, though, said they saw two men approach Hoffa maybe shortly after that conversation, and they had a brief conversation. Linto told investigators that Hoffa had called him around 3:30 p.m., so maybe like an hour after he called his wife, but investigators believe that the call had taken place earlier than that, because the FBI believed that Hoffa had left the parking lot without a struggle sometime between 2:45 and 2:50 p.m. They have a pretty tight window there.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
no way by 3:30 was he still making calls.
No.
Yeah.
And with one witness to this saying that they believe Hoffa had left the scene in like a maroon Lincoln or Mercury with 3 other men. So 4 total, including Hoffa.
4 total, including Hoffa. Okay, and it's maroon.
Maroon, so like a purple.
I was going to say that would definitely stand out, but I just remembered it's the mid-70s, and I think those funky colors were more common.
That's so true. Wow. So he's not heard from the rest of the day.
Yeah.
7 a.m. the following day, Hoffa's wife called their children to tell them that their father had never come home during like the night before. And roughly at 7:20 a.m., Linto went to the parking lot of the Red Fox restaurant and found Hoffa's unlocked car.
Oh, that's a bad sign.
Yeah, it's a really bad sign. He then called the police. The local police relayed this up the chain pretty shortly to the state police and the FBI, and they were brought in to investigate Hoffa's disappearance.
Everything's moving really quickly, and it must be because of his mob ties.
Absolutely, and that's prime FBI territory right there.
Mm-hmm.
So, 6 p.m. that day, so this would have been the 31st, Hoffa's son filed an official missing persons report, and the family offered $200,000 for information leading to his whereabouts.
Oh.
The first break in the investigation came when police identified a maroon 1975 Mercury that belonged to Yacolone's son, Joseph.
Mm.
So, according to our Joey boy here, earlier in the day, he had actually lent his car to his buddy, Charles Chucky O'Brien, so that he could use the car to deliver fish.
Okay.
It's a very likely story.
It's really specific.
It's incredibly specific. Interestingly, O'Brien had actually been a foster kid of Hoffa's, but the relationship had soured over the years.
That's so weird to think of him as a foster parent.
Right?
Like, you have organized crime connections, but you also have a heart of gold and take in foster kids.
Yeah, there's layers to this onion.
Absolutely.
So, let's go back into this. 3 weeks after Hoffa disappeared, police used canines to locate Hoffa's scent in the car, in the
Joseph's
maroon,
car
yeah, in Joseph's
that
car.
Chucky was driving?
Exactly. The two men who were supposed to meet with Hoffa that day, Provenzano and Yacolone, they both had alibis, placing them away from the restaurant that day.
Yeah, but that just means they either bribed their alibis or they weren't the ones to physically take
Yeah,
him.
I don't think they were there ever. I don't think they had any intention of even showing up at this restaurant.
Yeah, because he said he got stood up, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So they intentionally went and found alibis.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, they told him to be there, and then they were probably in like their club or like whatever, right? So that like there was a ton of witnesses saying, "Oh yeah, they were here like the whole afternoon."
Yeah.
So even through extensive wiretapping, investigators were unable to discern any evidence that the mafia had been involved whatsoever. Nobody was talking about the disappearance, not even privately, which is kind of odd and raises some red flags for me personally, like thinking that they knew that the house was bugged and that they had barred any discussion of Hoffa whatsoever inside, and if they were going to speak about it, they're probably going to do it outside.
You think it's suspicious that the FBI came up with nothing, essentially? That they wouldn't have even been shit-talking him or
Exactly.
been saying, like, oh, that kind of sucks.
Like, think about it, if you're truly innocent, you're probably, like, you'd probably
Curious.
make it, yeah, exactly, like, where the hell is this guy?
Yeah.
Like, what happened to Hoffa?
But to pretend like nothing has changed?
That's weird. That's really weird. So a few months later, in October of 1975, a tip led investigators to Waterford Township, Michigan, where they hoped to locate and exhume Hoffa's body. Obviously a dead end, though. In December, a federal investigator went before a judge and said that a witness had identified 3 men as having been involved in the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa. These men were close associates of Provenzano. They were Thomas Andretta, Salvatore Briguglio, and his brother Gabriel.
Can you say the last name again?
I'm not going to say that last name again. That's the best I can do, and if you don't like it, I don't care.
I will say, I have a weird last name.
That's true.
It's made up. I think I've said this before in the podcast. No one else has my last name. It's just my family. And I don't care if people mispronounce it. They mispronounce it every day. So we mispronounce names sometimes. What are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
When we know how to pronounce something, obviously we're going to pronounce it correctly.
Yeah. Especially these hard to pronounce ones.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm only human, guys. I'm only human.
You got to learn Italian. I just think that's something you should do because we're going to retire in Italy.
In Rome.
Yeah.
I should speak Latin.
Oh my gosh.
So, sadly, in September 1980, Hoffa's wife passed away.
Oh, so she
never
gets closure.
Exactly. And 2 years after that, in 1982, on the 7-year anniversary of his disappearance, authorities officially pronounced Jimmy Hoffa dead through absentia.
Just because they don't find anything, right?
Yeah, he's not a peep in 7 years, so they're just like, oh, he's dead. So fast forward to 1989, a Detroit field agent for the FBI told Fox News that he felt comfortable in saying that he knew what happened to Hoffa, but that this information would lead nowhere as it would require divulging sensitive information about powerful people.
What a pointless interview.
It's so pointless. I'm like, okay, cool.
He's like, I know stuff, but I can't tell you what I know because there's even bigger stuff that I know attached to it, and you're not going to know that either.
It's kind of reminds me or gives off the same energy as like when you're in middle school or high school and you're saying, "Oh yeah, I have a girlfriend. She lives like in another like city though. She doesn't go to school." Yeah.
She goes to another school.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know what's going on there. I just can't tell you.
Yeah, exactly. So, however, as recently as 2001, though, the FBI was able to use forensic evidence and actually match a strand of Hoffa's hair to a hair found in Yakalona's car.
Oh my gosh. 2001?
2001. However, that evidence was considered only circumstantial and didn't lead the investigation anywhere.
Yeah, that makes sense because it just shows that either he was in the car, or you could even argue that being near Jimmy Hoffa, his hair got on the other guy's coat, fell in the car.
If you have a good lawyer, he would just tell you to shut up.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's circumstantial.
Wow, but 2001, so they were still looking.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, we get into even more here. So, in June of 2006, the Detroit Free Press published a 56-page report titled The Hoffex Memo, which had been written up in 1976, so 40 years earlier. No, 30 years, sorry. My math got messed up there. As an FBI briefing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, what did it say?
The document, while unable to make any concrete claims regarding the case, stated that clues and evidence led them to believe that Hoffa had been abducted by O'Brien and killed. With Hoffa's scent and hair freshly in the back seat of the vehicle, a shotgun in the trunk, and various types of ammo in the glove compartment, authorities seemed sure that this was likely the case.
His former foster son.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but what about other theories in this case? So some claim that Hoffa had worked with authorities in criminal investigations against the mafia. However, others have pointed out that any information Hoffa was likely to have access to would have either A, incriminated himself, or B, was past the statute of limitations and was therefore useless.
Yeah, because he hadn't been in power in a while.
Exactly.
But the theory basically is that he was a rat.
Exactly. I mean,
Doesn't seem like him.
There's a lot of theories about him, and like we go over some here. But like another one was the former state chief investigator in charge of the Hoffa mystery, Vincent Piersante, believed that Hoffa's killing was accidental, and that the men sent to meet with Hoffa on the day of his disappearance would have likely been low-level messengers. Though this theory has never been very popular.
What would lead him to believe it was accidental?
I have no idea. I don't think this makes sense at all. And I am not a proponent of this theory.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, I think that's kind of dumb. So, crime writer Arthur A. Sloan discusses the popular theory that O'Brien was used as a lure to convince Hoffa to get into the car and drive away, a trap set by Provenzano's men, Thomas Andretta and Salvatore and Gabriel, with the funny last name. So this theory claims that the men used the familiar face of O'Brien, get Hoffa in the car, like coax him into the car, where he was either killed immediately or taken somewhere nearby to be killed. So another take on this with a slight modification, though, is that it was more likely to have been Vito Iacalone used to lure Hoffa into the car, as O'Brien was not exactly known as a reliable figure.
Okay.
And Sloan also argued that he believed Hoffa's body had been transported to New Jersey, where it was disposed of at a local incinerator and landfill. Though this theory seems far-fetched, as traveling the distance with a body from Detroit, basically, all the way to New Jersey would not have been practical, and the Detroit mob had plenty of resources and experience in getting rid of a body.
I've heard the theory that his remains are in Jersey before. But I agree, like, why add the risk of getting caught?
Yeah, I think it's implausible. I think that's really silly. Like, why go all the way to New Jersey?
Yeah, when, like you said, they know how to get rid of remains.
Yeah. I do think that one's kind of silly, honestly. So, in terms of location, it seems unlikely that Hoffa was murdered in the parking lot of the restaurant.
Yeah, the people would have seen something.
Exactly. That's way too public. It would have drawn way too much
Mm-hmm.
attention. So, Professor James I'm going to butcher this guy's name too, Bukelatuf of the National Gang Crime Research Center believes that he was taken to the home of Carlo Licata, roughly a mile away. So, Licata was the son of the mobster Nick Licata.
Okay. So another mob tie, but close by.
Exactly. And his body probably would have been taken to a local incinerator after that.
That would make sense as to why they couldn't find a body.
I think that is far more plausible,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's Occam's razor. The most likely scenario is probably the real scenario.
Mm-hmm.
So there have been plenty of disproven theories, just like straight off the bat, as well, like that proposed by author Charles Brandt, who published a book detailing and relying on the confession of a mob hitman, an actual friend of Hoffa, Frank Sheeran.
Oh, wow.
It's a long story, and I'm not going to get into it. All you need to know is that it was false, based not only on the timeline, but also DNA analysis.
Okay.
Yeah, so this guy Frank Sheeran did not kill Hoffa.
We know that for sure.
Yeah. Another popular theory was that Hoffa was actually buried under Giants Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
But that was proven false when the stadium was demolished in 2010 and ground penetrating radar was looked to use for bodies. Nothing was found, of course.
I love that they actually looked.
Me too.
That's so funny to me.
I feel like they had to.
Yeah, they're like, okay, we're gonna look dumb if we don't check.
I think so.
Yeah. My family are big Giants fans, so I was familiar with that theory as well.
Oh, yeah. So, multiple convicted murderers have even come in and tried to sell the tale that they were somehow involved, but no evidence has ever been found. In fact, one of them, Richard Kuklinski, who was a convicted killer known as the Iceman, even gave a false deathbed confession in 2003.
Why?
I don't know.
Like for the street cred?
I think so. He's like, I want to go out with a bang.
That's so wild that people wanted to be associated with this infamous disappearance.
Oh, yeah. I mean, rumors. I had to cut out, like, our research assistant did a great job in providing a lot of detail, but I had to cut out a lot of it because it was just, like, there were so many.
Yeah.
And they all said basically the same thing, but I thought that was the most interesting one.
Yeah, deathbed confession, you would think they're going to tell you the truth at the very end.
Yeah.
But he still lied.
He still lied. So it was even rumored, another funny one, that the old bookie for Yaklone was busy pouring concrete the night of Hoffa's disappearance.
Okay.
But after use of ground-penetrating radar in 2012, it was deemed to be false, as no remains were found on his property.
Wouldn't
Yes.
it be fun to have like ground penetrating radar and just like go around and see what's under stuff?
Yes, absolutely.
That would be so cool. Taking it to like the forum in
Oh,
Rome.
they do use it, and it's really hard because there's so much stuff.
There's so much stuff. That'd be so cool. That's like when I was little, I really, really wanted a metal detector.
Me too. Oh, I did get one, but it was crappy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was like trendy when we were kids.
Yeah, like around like when we were young.
Yeah.
Like kind of like the late 90s, early 2000s era.
I had such a fascination with them. That's what ground penetrating radar is to me, just leveled up.
Yeah, I really want ground penetrating radar now.
And it's helped with this case, it sounds like.
Yes, it has. At least ruled out things.
Mm-hmm.
Or ruled out theories. So there have been excavations, by the way, as late as 2021.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, looking for the body, but of course, and now unsurprisingly, nothing has ever been found.
It remains unsolved.
It remains unsolved. So, Hoffa is an interesting enigma because, on one hand, he was a power-hungry gangster, right? But on the other, he was a champion of workers' rights and was instrumental in the advancement of the American middle class. And going back to that question that you asked me about,
Yeah.
like, was he searching for power? I think yes. I think he was searching for power. But I don't necessarily believe that he also didn't care about the worker's plight.
Like the issues that he took on, like workers' rights, civil rights, rights for incarcerated people. You think it was genuine, but more than that, he wanted power.
I think so.
Yeah, I
And I
can see
think
that.
as he got older and more powerful, I think his love for power became stronger for
Bigger.
the love for the workers.
Yeah, I could see that.
That's my own personal interpretation, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not like, you no one knows for certain.
Right.
And I do have a prediction here too that kind of within the next 10 to 20 years, I think we're going to see a re-examination of Hoffa's legacy, and I think he's going to be seen in a much more positive light, especially now when you look at just the corporations that exist and how powerful they are. You kind of have to think like he was kind of right in some regards.
I definitely only have ever heard very disparaging things.
Yes, me too.
So it's very interesting to hear what a more nuanced person he was.
his his character was very nuanced. I think that's a great word to
Yeah.
describe it because again, like he did terrible things, but he also did amazing things.
Mm-hmm.
He was both. And it's kind of interesting because of his disappearance, the federal government began to crack down on organized crime much more harshly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But we kind of have to ask the question, what is the deal with the fascination behind Hoffa?
Mm-hmm.
So Chris Wright, he's an author with a PhD in history of workers' rights,
Mm.
states that, quote, Hoffa symbolizes a political economy long gone, an era when a union leader could strike fear and loathing in the hearts of senators and presidents, when the old industrial working class, millions strong and capable of bringing the economy to its knees if it so desired, was still the foundation of the social order. End quote.
Ooh, that's a good quote.
I love that quote. I think it
Yeah.
describes him perfectly, or at least the not him, but the fascination behind him.
This idea that the working class would, someone representing them would have enough power to strike fear in the most powerful people.
Exactly, and I feel like we kind of need people to strike fear in government, in corporations now.
Mm, yeah.
Again, that's just my own personal take, though. So the Hoffa mystery is something that virtually all Metro Detroiters are familiar with, right? As it has become something of a legend. And in fact, in 2020, when Ford Motor Company was beginning to do renovations on the famous Michigan Central Station building, workers reported that while they dug hundreds of holes and cleared out gallons of water and debris, there was, quote, no Jimmy Hoffa.
They were looking.
Yeah, they were looking that almost like half expecting to find him there because it's been so ingrained in like I think Detroit area culture.
Wow.
I mean, searching for Hoffa is just plain old normal community work. So I'm going to read actually what our research assistant Felicia wrote verbatim in this next part because I think she brings up a really good point and I just didn't want to butcher it. So, with virtually zero evidence related to Hoffa's disappearance and the people who do know what happened not talking,
Mm.
there's no way the case can be solved. Perhaps, too, the FBI doesn't want anyone to know the truth. Hoffa is already, to many, a martyr and near saint in the labor world. Would solving the case make that better or worse?
Ooh, what a good question.
Yeah, Felicia rocked it with that one.
That's a really good question. Do people want to actually have the truth out there? Interesting.
That's very interesting. Yeah, and that she does bring up a good point. Honestly, I don't know. I could see it either way.
Same.
Kind of crazy. And speaking of his legacy, Hoffa was inducted into the Labor Rights Hall of Fame. I believe in
Mm,
1999. Don't quote me on that year, but I believe it was around that time.
I had no idea.
Yeah. So he still is looked up to in the labor movement.
Wow.
So I'm going to end this week's episode by repeating a quote from Chris Wright on Hoffa. Quote, perhaps his greatest legacy can be summed up in the inscription on a plaque he displayed on his desk. Illegitimi non corpora durum. Don't let the bastards grind you down. End quote.
Yeah. Wow. That's definitely how he approached his career.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So, Weirdos, Steph, that was the mystery of the infamous Jimmy Hoffa and his disappearance.
That was a great story. Thank you so much for teaching us. I think I'm gonna get a plaque like that for my desk, by the way.
Do it in Latin too.
Yeah,
Let's
in
go.
Latin.
I don't think my pronunciation was a little bit off on that, so please forgive me, guys.
Mm-hmm. That was incredible. Weirdos, we would love to hear from you. What are your theories? If you are from Detroit or have lived in Detroit, what's your Hoffa story?
Yeah, you gotta let us know because I am really interested. Also, let us know in either like the comments on Instagram or on
Spotify.
Spotify. Thank you. Like what you guys think. Who killed him?
Yeah.
What happened to Jimmy Hoffa?
What happened?
I mean, there's a million theories, so I'd love to hear more.
Exactly. This was a really good mystery for us to end on for
Yeah.
our Historical Mysteries Month. Thank you so much.
This is the end of Historical Mysteries July. I hope you guys really enjoyed it because I definitely enjoyed being a little bit like an investigator, I think, in this month for these episodes.
I did too. And I think we would actually really like to hear which episodes were your favorite.
Yeah, let us know.
If you had a specific mystery that you really enjoyed. I've heard from some weirdos that they like the unsolved ones, and then I've heard from some weirdos that they hate the unsolved ones.
So you're going to either love or hate this one.
Yes.
That's for sure.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, babe.
You're so welcome.
And weirdos, until next time.
Until next time, weirdos, adios.